Hello, and welcome to Sci-Trek. How are we doing?
We're doing quite well. How are you, Jay?
I'm very, very well. Just remembered, got kids knocking around, so I'm going to put my headphones in. Okay, so today I am joined by my good friend and my resident American, Stormy. And we're going to be talking about everything Star Trek. Mainly, what is the best Star Trek series? And maybe comparing the original Star Trek or the classics to the modern Star Trek. So first of all, welcome. And Stormy, how are you doing, sir? How are you?
I am dodging Omicron like a bitch, man.
Just turning my stove down.
I'm in my fear bunker here in California.
Yeah. Hey, we've had some snow today. So I've gone all Christmassy. I might crack a bottle of mulled wine open later. We're going to have first snow of the year. We never get snow this early, so it's going to be a lovely winter, I feel.
We rarely get water.
I know. 100 degrees centigrade. Oh, lovely, lovely. It's hell on earth.
It is hell on earth.
We're not talking pandemics, and we're not talking Christmas just yet. Instead, we're going to be talking Star Trek. So, first of all, let's just go on the classics. The original series, TNG, Deep Space Nine, Voyager, all those. What is your favorite Star Trek series, and why? Do you have a favorite?
My favorite is definitely Deep Space Nine. There's a bunch of reasons. For one thing, it went against character essentially for Star Trek series. It was dark. It was messy. It showed the undercarriage of the Federation. I think it was one of the best series on television, regardless of sci-fi or whatever the genre was, of a father-son relationship. You know that especially in the Black communities, you see. If you hear it from their perspective, their point of view, it's like we've never seen that before because it was really, I mean,
I never considered that actually. The Sisko and his son,
huh?
The Sisko and his son relationship.
Yeah. Jake Sisko and they just loved each other no matter what crazy Dabo girl Jake dragged in for the night.
There's some good Dabo girls, didn't they?
Oh,
let's be honest.
Girl, right.
I want to learn how to play that game.
I want to learn how to win that game.
Oh, hell yeah. I think my favorite though is The Next Generation. But because that was the show it's like my Star Trek. I watched the original series when I was little, when I was a tiny little boy. But it was already 30 years old when I was watching it, so it was really quite dated. But then the TNG came along, The Next Generation, and I was watching them new every week, and I'd never seen it before. So the brand new series was coming out. I was having to wait for it week on week, and then episodes like Best of Both Worlds just blew my mind. It was just like that was the some of the best telly I'd ever seen. Characters like Data, and I just adored. I really fancied Deanna Troi, and it's just like this. And I mean, I love the first couple of series where they we'll talk about woke and stuff a bit later, but it was like in the first couple of series of The Next Generation, all the little short skirts and their low cut tops and the uniform Deanna Troi, it was like for a boy at my age.
Yeah.
This is the greatest thing in the world. It's like, I absolutely loved it.
Just because I just fawn over Deep Space Nine doesn't mean that Next Generation was just awesome. I mean, it was. I mean, it at the time in 87 when it started. It went where no TV series went before.
Most definitely. So I actually put this question out on Facebook a lot and stuff, and some people did just their answer was, I said, "What's the best Star Trek?" And some people's answer was Star Trek. It's all brilliant.
Right.
And I'm like, yeah, but not all Star Trek's equal. It just isn't. If I was going to ask you then a phaser against your head, what is the best Star Trek series? Would it be Deep Space Nine still? Is that why it's your favorite? Because it's just the best of the genre?
I think it's the best of the genre, but I'm telling you, dude, Lower Decks is just
oh
my
man,
God.
that's controversial. Oh, there'll be comments.
Oh, you're going to get all the hate mail, man. But I really love Lower Decks. I mean, it is just so wrong. I mean, in so many ways, for all the right reasons, almost. Now, talk about going against your standard Trek flavor. Lower Decks. I mean, you have the functional dysfunctionals in the bowels of the Cerrito running around with their panic attacks and and mother daughter angst. It's just great. It's everything the Orville could have been.
I know, I love the Orville. We'll get away from that though. But I Lower Decks, that's a different video. But Lower Decks, I will say to you, I love Lower Decks. I think it's brilliant because I think it's, but I don't really consider it Star Trek.
Right.
It's not canon. It isn't canon. The stuff that goes on in that series, and more importantly, though, I think to me, it's like it's a love letter to the next generation.
I think it is, yeah.
Yeah, it's not really Star Trek in like the strictest sense of the word. It's like it's a love letter to Star Trek, and I adore it. I absolutely adore it. But yeah, I
mean, if I so when I turn on Paramount Plus here in the US, if I have right now, my choices are Prodigy, Lower Decks, or the new Discovery episode or season 4 episode. I started off with Lower Decks because, like, what in the hell are they going to do this week?
I do love that show.
It kind of reminds me of Archer in a little bit, but without all the phrasing.
The style is very much like the Archer cartoon series, definitely. I love the opening sequence. I love when they turn up and the Borg starts shooting. They go, they just fly the other way.
Yeah, which was not. You were right. Which was not the Battle of Wharf 359. It was not, because there's 3 cubes involved. And there's only one at Wharf 359.
That's a battle we don't know about. So there you go. All right, then. My favorite. If I'm going to say my favorite series is TNG. If we go back to proper Star Trek,
right?
But I honestly think I'm with you. The best series of Star Trek is Deep Space Nine, and it doesn't get a lot of love sometimes. Deep Space Nine, but I'm with you. I think it broke the mold of what Star Trek was.
Right.
You get episodes. We'll go talk about the series in specifics, but in the Pale Moonlight with Sisko, broke the wall down, and Sisko was talking about this plan that they'd had to get the Romulans involved in the Dominion War, and it really showed a dark side, not only of Sisko but of the Federation. And I don't think I'd ever seen it like TNG touched on this occasion. There's a couple of episodes where you see the dark side of the Federation, but not really. The Pegasus episode, a couple of others. But in this, it really we saw what people are actually capable of when we're threatened and when we're backs against the wall, sort of thing, and what humanity's capable of. And it was, I don't know, it was more realistic than maybe TNG, whereas that it was this utopia, the golden age of the Federation and everything else, and everything was all lovely and fuzzy,
right.
Whereas DS9 got a bit grittier.
Sisko is, the real problem with the Federation is Earth, because on Earth is a paradise. No one's hungry. There's no homelessness and everything. But out here, at the ass end of Federation space, it's not Earth.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, how many way missions did Garrett go on for God's sake? I mean,
I love the Garrett character. He was fantastic, and he was just such a brilliant actor. He's one of those actors that he's phenomenal, even when he's acting like a complete evil. He's just great, and I love the episodes where he's because he's a claustrophobic. Genuinely brilliant acting, fantastic acting.
I think in terms of acting skills, I can't remember I'm a schmutz. I can't remember the actor's name right off the top of my head, but the guy that played Garrick, I think he was probably the best actor in the cast.
He comes across as a proper actor, and you see him on stage or something. He was
yeah. I mean, he was a very. He reminded me a lot of Patrick Stewart, having those, just I don't know, screen presence or something,
Yeah, I mean, I think the guy that plays Cisco is brilliant. Avery Brooks was
Avery
brilliant.
Brooks, yeah.
The guy that plays Dr. Bashir is a really good actor as well. Actually, to be fair, they had a really good cast for that show.
It did, yeah. I mean, they all were, went on to do really cool things. I mean, the last time I saw Alexander Siddig, I think the guy that's his the name that play Dr. Bashir. He was in an episode of Foundation, which is on Apple Plus.
Still haven't seen
Foundation. Dude, it's the
there's
just shit. Yeah, all the first season's episodes are up. It's a brain bender because you're
time to get a month subscription. Yeah, it's time to get a month subscription. I need to watch that series Jason Momoa did anyway. But anyway, going off topic. So I put a poll on last week. Here we go. We got 213 votes. But the question was, what is the best Star Trek? And then what really inspired me to do this video was actually after it had been up 2 or 3 days, Deep Space Nine was way ahead. I mean, Deep Space Nine was like 40% of the votes or something. But I mean, obviously more votes came in and it's evened out a little bit. And so I'll give you the numbers. The original series, 18%. The Next Generation was the winner with 36%, just over a third of the votes. Voyages, 16%. Deep Space Nine, 21%, which I thought was really interesting. And Enterprise, 9%. Is there anything that really surprises you with those numbers?
Yeah, it's every generation has a track. I mean, there's there's so much material out there. Oh, if you throw in the books and the comic books, I mean, there's literally something for damn near everybody to fan over. I mean, and
that's why I love the TNG. So that's my Star Trek. That was this Trek when I was like 15, 16, blah, 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 So that's mine. Like,
and I think it's just such a wealth of material, and deep storytelling is I think that's why it has such a broad audience, is there's something for everybody, depending on what kind of story style you want. You may be, you may have kids that are just, neck deep in Prodigy because it tells a wholly different side of the story.
Can't talk about Prodigy because we haven't got it in the UK yet. We're not allowed it.
Well, we have Prodigy and T. What does that tell you?
Yeah, the Americans are spoiled. But I mean, if we talk about this, we'll probably get Prodigy on this new channel that's just come out, Pluto. That's where we're getting Disco. Disco. I haven't watched it.
Andrew Robinson. Andrew Robinson is the guy that played Garrick.
Andrew Robinson. Brilliant actor. Good memory. Well done. The original series, then, right? That's got 18% of the votes. So that rate's pretty much steady throughout the poll. So there's a reason why we're still making the original series, and everything Star Trek does is compared to the original series. We've got Strange New Worlds coming up, and one of the things for that is they keep saying it's going to merge. It's going to be the best of new Trek and the best of old Trek. We're going to get back to the whole title, Strange New Worlds, comes straight from the opening bit of Star Trek.
I'm quite excited about it.
I'm not even a bit. But we'll talk about the new Trek in a little while because I've got some quite strong opinions on it.
Just to clarify, the new Trek we're discussing is the stuff from Paramount Plus, right?
Everything J.J. Abrams onwards. Yeah,
J.J. We're starting at J.J. The Kelvin timeline too.
Yeah. So we'll talk about everything from after it went on hiatus. I'm referring to as new Trek. Do you think there's a reason why the original series is basically still being remade, or just those characters are refreshed? I mean, I'm even saying the Strange New Worlds is basically rehashing an old story again. Is there a reason for it? Was it that good? Was it that innovative? Was it that different?
In terms of innovation for 1960s, oh yeah, it was that innovative. It's see, I suffered through. We had 2 channels, maybe 3 if the cloud cover wasn't that bad for West Virginia, and it was soap opera. The most radical thing on TV before Star Trek came out was Dark Shadows.
Oh
It was
yes,
a soap opera that, and it was
vampires and things.
well, it
All right.
started out as just a typical romance drama, right? A little bit of
Mm,
gothic stuff feeded in, but it was going to be canceled.
mm,
So the creator said, "Well, let's just throw in vampires and fuck everybody. See what I." And then they had what's the actor's name? Jonathan Freed, I think, that was
mhm,
playing Barnabas, and it was just lit.
mm,
I remember my aunt's coming home from college. Just we got to watch Dark Shadows, and my grandmother loved it for whatever reason. And so that was it was and that was an accidental sea change. I mean, it was
mm.
just the producer saying, "Well, let's just go have fun, throw in vampires. Willie Lomax, he's got to die. Why not?" And but that was it. There wasn't
Mm,
anything really serious. I mean, Lost in Space, my favorite Martian, were not serious
yeah,
sci-fi.
Land of the Giants shows like that were very
Land
popular.
of
There
the
was
Right,
Voyage to the Bottom of the Sea, and that was about it. That wasn't it really.
right, and I think those were those in the same period.
See that we roughly the 60s,
Hmm.
early 70s, wasn't it? I think, but we're talking roughly. In the UK, we didn't really have Darker Shadows. It didn't really come over here.
Okay.
All those TV shows you're talking about really didn't come over until the 90s, and they were shown on like Sunday morning TV.
Right.
Our sci-fi was Thunderbirds, Doctor Who, and that was it. So Star Trek again was the thing. But when Star Wars came out, obviously, and that was such a massive hit, that's sort of when we sort of started getting popular sci-fi.
Yeah, Land
Um,
of Giants was came out 2 years after the original track.
well, there you go. So same sort of thing. I suppose with the moon landings and all this sort of thing, it was sci-fi was popular for a
Yeah.
bit. It was like well, that was the early stages of becoming really popular. So I always found it really interesting then when the Next Generation came out, that how angry people were. People seem to forget how angry everybody was when the Next Generation came out. That this isn't Star Trek. It's peeing all over the original. Uh, Everyone hated it before it even aired. And now everybody keeps going on about this thing with woke, and we're looking at getting new Stargate and new things like the new shows, and everyone's just immediately it'll be rubbish. Every reboot is always rubbish, and I'm not this show is going to be terrible. I'm not watching it. Everybody did that 30 years ago with the Next Generation, and now
Oh,
we consider it the
they
classic.
didn't have the word. They hadn't invented the word woke yet in
Mm,
1966. But the local clans groups hated it because of a interracial kiss, b capitalism ultimately failed.
mhm.
So there's that, and so it's a communist
Yeah,
plot.
good point.
The Reds are over here, in Hollywood. They've taken over the Jews. I mean, there was hot and cold running hatred over the original Trek in the 60s because
Mm.
my grandfather
I mean, the
participated
thing
in it.
with the interracial kiss is that had to be forced. That's not what Gene Roddenberry wanted to do. He
No,
wanted to
no.
have them kiss, and then the executive freaked out and went, "No, you will start a riot. We can't do that." So they had that child thing that forced them to kiss, and that's sort of like that made it okay. Because oh no, yeah, they don't want to kiss each other, they have to, and that was.
And-
But there was still,
oh,
hatred
there were
for
still
that
there were
episode.
still protests.
Hmm.
My grandfather was so pissed off about it that I couldn't watch Trek anymore.
See, now
From
that is insane. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah.
he had his issues, really deep.
All grandparents have
Yeah,
issues.
I mean, oh my God, Jesus, dude,
It's a
um,
different generation, mate. It's a completely different generation.
well, yeah, it
My
may have been a
nan
different
is a
generation, but
closet.
he was still on the bad end of that. I mean, there was people that grew up in that generation that wasn't like him.
No, of
He
course, yeah.
was one of those people, and
Uh,
so anyway, that's a whole different, and that's a psychology show.
yeah.
But but still, it was still mayhem. People. I mean, it was in
Mm,
the paper. It was talked about in church, even though it was forced. Didn't care. They touched lips.
yeah. Oh, and then he's leisurely looking up. His eyes are open, and we all know that a kiss with your eyes open isn't really a kiss as well. So That's I always check. I always have one eye open just to make sure my wife's actually got her eyes closed, and I kiss her just to make sure she's not angry at me. It's a thing, honestly. You're not convinced.
Well, no, I was thinking of the first episode of the reboot of Battlestar Galactica.
Yeah.
The miniseries. Six comes in. Are you alive? And then she kisses the guy, and his eyes are open. Probably because he's in terror, and then he dies, of course. And never mind. That was
We've got to do. I'm going to do a video on the mini series of Battlestar Galactica, and I am going to make the argument that is probably some of the best sci-fi that's ever been made. That first miniseries. I wasn't a massive fan of the series. It got a bit as it went on. It got a bit out of it. But that miniseries is genuinely phenomenal. I think that goes up against anything else.
So what's the common elements between Battlestar Galactica, the version 2, and Deep Space Nine?
I think it's the reality and the shock factor of it as well, though. I mean, and the layers to it. The scene that made me sort of go, "This is different," was when I'm sorry, I forget. It's a long time since I watched this. I'm not going to remember the names, but the tall blonde Cylon, and she's cooing the baby,
right?
And she's sort of like, "Oh, isn't it fragile?" And you just hear the baby's crying, and then you hear it, and the baby stops crying.
Right.
How many TV series can you ever see that a child dies, never mind a baby, in the first? I mean, I know it was done for a shock factor, but I mean, it worked, and it told you a lot about what was going on in the series. Deep Space Nine obviously never went quite that far,
right?
But there were elements to that show that make you sort of go, "Oh, this is different," and then just the reality of it, I think, was that, well, it's not reality, obviously, because it's a fantasy, but the grounding in something that we can relate to,
right?
What do you think?
Well, I think it was because they were created by the same guy.
Yeah. Well,
I mean, really. The showrunner for Deep Space Nine, and wrote most of the episodes. Same guy that produced and wrote most of the episodes for Battlestar Galactica. And
I think you could probably see that in some of the battle scenes and things.
Yeah,
I mean, the thing that stands out for me, Deep Space Nine as well, was the battle scenes, which I'm in love. I love a decent battle scene. That's why I love the movies when they come along. It's why I can't hate Nemesis, however much the film isn't the greatest.
Right.
It's because the battle scene is great. They normally let us down with the battle scenes, but in Deep Space Nine they didn't. I mean, and I watching an Excelsior class starship blow up, I love that as much as the next man, and that happened every 3 or 4 minutes. It was, it was fantastic. I've just done a video about how I think the Excelsior is the greatest Starfleet design. It is because it was on the front line for a century, sort of thing.
It is snazzy.
It's a great ship, and it blows up beautifully, like every 5 minutes. But it's. But I think that was the thing with that. It's just that the Deep Space Nine didn't have that fuzzy Star Trek, everything's brilliant moments.
Right.
It actually had, we're actually at risk of losing everything here, sort of thing. And in Battlestar Galactica, obviously they lose everything. It's just survival. It's just desperately trying to survive. It's just like, can we just get past today, sort of thing. And again, that's different. That's not in a lot of sci-fi sort of thing. But anyway, we'll get back to Star Trek. So
anyway, my idea about Ronald Moore, he wrote a lot of the episodes for the Next Generation, and he was neck deep in Deep Space Nine, and there's a lot of everything he writes tends to, with the exception of Caprica, has really done well. There's this one show called Outlander. It's kind of a time traveling romance series that's really good. And it's, I guess
it's bits of that, yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
I never really got into it, but yeah.
I guess it's kind of sci-fi in a timey-wimey kind of way. But also, he does this thing for Apple Plus called For All Mankind. It's like if the premise is, what if the Russians got to the moon first? How would that all play out? And it's like an alternate history, and it is really engaging too. So I think the key factor here is Ronald Moore doesn't get enough credit for what he's done in episodic sci-fi. Because I mean, the things we're talking about and we're gushing over all had his fingers in it. The creative end, the writing.
That's really true. All right. If we get back to this poll, 16% for Voyager. That's pretty low. Do you think that's fair? I mean, all of these series suffered with first series crapness.
Right.
So it's every single one. Even the Next Generation first series crap. Although it had moments in it though. I would honestly say Conspiracy is one of the best Star Trek episodes because I mean that stands out. Voyager, really, until they encountered the Borg, that show was boring as hell. Deep Space Nine, really, until the Defiant comes into it, it's not the most interesting show in the world. 16% for Voyager. I don't think that's fair.
It was on what it shared. It was on at the same time. Deep Space Nine was on for what 3-4 years. That overlap, which was uncommon.
Well, DS9 and TNG overlapped for 2 or 3 series as well, didn't they?
Did they really? Okay.
Yeah. That's why there is an overlap episode, isn't there? The first episode of Deep Space Nine, Picard's in it. I think it's only 2 seasons, actually. I think it's just 2 years.
Let me look it
up. But yeah, the first episode, the Enterprise visits Deep Space Nine.
Yeah, they overlap by 1 season.
Oh, 1 season, okay.
Voyager ended, and then Enterprise with Jonathan Archer, it started up that same year. But the biggest overlap they've had is, of course, Deep Space Nine and Voyager. So I'm wondering if, I've only got enough room in my plate for one Star Trek thing this week.
Yeah.
Maybe, I don't know.
I think there's, if you think like the finale episodes of all of these series, TNG's finale episode was good. And, it was really good, and it did tie a lot of things together.
Right.
The Deep Space Nine finale for me was actually 2 or 3 episodes before. The finale episode ties everything up with the prophets and stuff, but it's actually I think it's quite forgettable, and it's not my favorite part of that series. Voyager's finale was brilliant. Voyager's finale for me was the best was the best finale of any of the series they've ever done. I thought it tied it all up really nicely. They got home in a way that wasn't stupid. It was entertaining. Obviously, the Borg were in it in a Borg race.
I know.
So
I like that scene, where the portal opens, all this, Borg debris shoots out, and then here comes Voyager shooting out with it. That's where you've been.
But there was lots of rumors at the time that Voyager wasn't going to make it home, and that was going to be the cliffhanger sort of thing, and then they did. Excuse me. I just thought it was phenomenal. I think 16% of it, and the characters. I wasn't a big fan of Chakotay. Don't get me wrong. If Chakotay wasn't there, I wouldn't have cared at all. It wouldn't have really made any difference. Janeway was a brilliant captain, and I when she lost her temper, it was good. Sort of thing.
Do not approach unless caffeinated,
Oh yeah, no, give that girl a coffee and she's all right. 7 of 9 is still one of my favorite characters in any Star Trek. Not just because Jeri Ryan is astonishingly stunning. No, sorry, it is because Jeri Ryan's astonishingly stunning. I love her very, very much. There's the Q squared episode when Q Junior comes on, and he's watching 7 of 9, and he goes, clicks his fingers and her clothes disappear, and he goes, she just turns around and goes, "Do you think I'm going to get embarrassed?" That sort of thing. And I'm just like, that is apparently one of the most paused and rewound bits of any Star Trek ever. And I'm like,
I like to, Aunt Kathy.
Aunt Kathy, yeah, exactly. I'm doing a video soon about Star Trek and the Q, and that is one of the scenes that I think tells you a lot about the Q. Is when he's sort of like, "Don't antagonize the Borg." He's not bothered that Janeway was nearly, assimilated. He's bothered that Q Junior was messing around with the Borg again, and I'm like, I think that tells you a lot about the Q. But anyway, that's a teaser for a future video. Not telling more those.
But Delancey first, he was the villain right out of the gate, Farpoint Station, and And he was just right up, right up Picard's ass about it, and he's been, sprinkled in. I don't know. I don't think did Q ever appear in a Deep Space Nine episode?
One. And it's the most forgettable episode. Cisco bitch slaps him at one point and knocks him on his ass. And Picard goes, Picard never hit me. And
Picard
goes, I'm not Picard. Boom. So I think, but yeah, it was a nothing episode really. It doesn't really tell you anything about the Q. It's a bit of an odd episode really. But Voyager, he was in 3 or 4 episodes of Voyager, and actually the Q Junior is actually his son. It's his real life son, which I always liked. Yeah. So that was always interesting. Someone's going to tell me I'm wrong there, but it's definitely it's definitely his same second name anyway. It's Delancey. It's something Delancey.
And what's the chances of that?
Yeah, exactly. No, I'm pretty sure it's vaguely.
I think he's actually been in Lower Decks.
Yes, he has. He's done one episode of Lower Decks as well, but that's not canon. We're still going to have this argument. So. Enterprise was 9%. I'm surprised it's even that high. Right? The question was, what is the best Star Trek? Discovery at 9%? That's 10% of people virtually. We're going to say, there's out of 213 votes, there's 20 or so people that voted think Enterprise is the best Star Trek, that it's better than Deep Space Nine, Voyager, The Next Generation, and the original series. What's your thoughts on that?
Well, I wonder if it's like market penetration. Discovery. I mean, I think it was the first series of Star Trek anything that you couldn't get on DVD.
Yeah.
This
Enterprise, mate, not Discovery. Enterprise got 9% of votes.
Oh, Enterprise got 9%.
Enterprise got 9%.
Well, I got no. Well, I guess Jolene Blaylock's costume can only go so far.
Yes, I like the mirror verse ones. Having a shower, you can see them do a spike every time they have a shower.
Or getting the spore gel UV bath after they came off of the Klingon ship that was trapped between the gaseous layers of some gas giant.
They weren't subtle, were they?
No,
they knew their audience.
They knew
their audience.
Yeah, no, it was.
Yeah, that's smother you in. Basically, looks like lubricant.
Well, and I think it speaks to the general, Star Trek fan is a little bit more intellectual than a titillated, 12-year-old boy. That's not the market audience.
Yeah. Yet it still works. It worked to a degree. I watched it. And then you got the Mirrorverse episodes when they've all got their belly buttons out. Just for no reason.
Everyone, yeah.
That's how you knew. I just always wanted them to paint little evil goatees on them. But for the women belly buttons out, men, evil goatees. And that's the only way to do it. But I think Enterprise 9% is really generous. But I'm more angry at Enterprise, and it frustrates me because it should have been better. For me, it's a series that didn't really ever quite know what it was, and it shows. It lost its identity. I always thought it would be a show about how the Federation becomes to be, how the Federation becomes the Federation, but it's not. It's really a series about the temporal Cold War, and
who'd ever heard of that thing?
Yeah, exactly. But that's just like, how did that not turn up in it? And it really annoys me that the Enterprise even was called the Enterprise, because that is just like that. They just wanted to call the ship the Enterprise because obviously that's the ship we know. So they called it. If we call it the NX Enterprise, then we get around the fact that nobody's ever mentioned this ship before,
right?
And that it's not in the models. Where Picard's got his models on the thing of all the Enterprises. It's not there. So that's okay. They should have just called it Endeavour or something, or anything else.
Yeah, and there were so many things they could have done differently, and the actors, they've over the years is it could have been better, it could have, we didn't know exactly what was going on, And I think even some of the senior writers were unhappy with the direction. What was the producer's name? Bierman, was he still involved at that point in time?
He was.
They weren't happy. It was just like
changed in the third series, didn't it, to another chapter? But
yeah, and it was just if it wasn't named Enterprise, and they did stick. I mean, there was little flakes of the starting, the antagonism. I think there's still lots of stories you could have had with the antagonism or the overprotectiveness of the Vulcans. The the how why is mind melds, why is that verboten? I mean, that was those were still great stories. We found out a lot about Vulcan early culture that was never mentioned anywhere else. We started off at one point, and that was how Vulcan always was. Except only time they mentioned the past was when they converted to logic, never the bumpy road during that point. And I think all of that was missed opportunity. And I think it was so badly done that I think it's going to be a long time before we see that kind of Star Trek again.
Yeah, but there was some parts of it that was so brilliantly done, and that's why it makes it so. The relationship between humanity and the Vulcans. The first two episodes, actually, I thought was beautifully made and really set things up. I didn't like the whole Klingon bit, but
right.
Overall,
Broken Bow, was that the name of the episode?
Broken Bow, yeah. So. But the relationship between the humanity and Vulcans, I was just like, that's genius. That's actually what it would be like. You know, I could see us being like the Vulcans and their logic, and us just going, "Oh, just let us out." I could see it perfectly done. I always really liked Scott Bakula as well.
You had those little moments like when first time the Enterprise crew hits an alien world, and Trip is, I don't know, he's in like the concourse of some really dimly lit mall. And there's this mother suffocating her son. He gets all pissed off about it. He doesn't know that the kid's being weaned off of whatever atmosphere he grew up in.
Of course,
He sees it through a human eyes as being cruel and unusual, and
really clever.
And then he gets bitch slapped by the local Vulcan. No, dumbass. She's being
Yeah, stop looking at everything through human eyes. Yeah, I mean, the growth was. We needed more of that and less of the temporal Cold War. For me. More. I want to see more of the how did Red Alert come along and photon torpedoes and all this sort of thing. I wanted to see more of that, but they missed an opportunity there, and that's what frustrated me. And the Enterprise NX second version with the where they were going to put an engineering section in, and it looked a lot more like a Constitution class. They were going to bring that in for the 5th series apparently, and that frustrates me as well because it looks great.
Yeah.
And if you've ever seen it, it looks amazing. But it's beta canon; it's not real. But they should have done that at the end of Series 4. They had the battle with the Sphere Builders and the Xindi, and Enterprise limped home after getting its ass handed to it, and it's heavily damaged.
Right.
That's when they should have done the refit.
Yeah.
It could have given the series it would have been logical. Could have given the series a bit kick up the arse it needed. And I think we could have seen a 6th series, but
we could have. Yeah, it was
Yeah,
lots of lost opportunities.
Talking about lost opportunities.
Looking back, something what could have been in terms of Star Trek Enterprise. What if it looked a lot like The Expanse? I mean, it was mostly Enterprise was mostly Earth-centric, but there was a lot of humanity had moved out a little bit farther, even with Warp 1, Warp 2 ships or whatnot.
Yeah.
What about the Beltalowda? What about those guys?
Yeah. Well, yeah. Those things we saw, we only got hints of loads of times that I wish we'd seen more of. Like where the pilot had come from and he was a boomer sort of thing. And then they never really explained that. They just sort of mentioned that a few times. So, we were out there without warp and without gravity and without all this sort of thing. We never really got to see any of that, really. It was very much centered on the Enterprise. I'd have wanted to see a lot more about Starfleet and Starfleet growing pains and things. Never mind the fact that we don't actually see how the Federation came to be. it's all in the last 3 episodes. It jumps from nothing to like 5 years in the future, and everyone says I've had arguments with people about the last 2 episodes of Enterprise. Now saying how Voyager, the last 2 episodes for me are the best. Is the best one.
Right.
Enterprise's last 2 episodes are the worst. It's not a good episode. As an end of series episode, just like the end of season episode is quite good to key up the next series. I think it's quite a good episode. I really like how it harked back to the Pegasus episode in TNG. I quite liked the Riker bit, but as a finale for the series, it's awful. It's really, really bad. But they got cancelled. But they'd already written it, and then they got cancelled, so they just reworked it a little bit to make it work.
Worked with what they had and said, okay, and that was the last broadcast television of Star Trek. It kind of gave a finale on it, and you went to hibernation until Paramount said, well, we got to figure out something completely different, and then we got Discovery.
Before we talk about this, we got the poll running along the bottom for the next little vote we did, but I want to talk about. So yeah, Enterprise ended, bit of a failure, sadly. And we then had, like you said, a hiatus, and then we had the J.J. Abrams reboot.
Right.
Why do you think we have this insistence on prequels, basically? Discovery, prequel. Stranger Worlds, prequel. I mean, Stranger Worlds is even before the original series. Why can't we have a series like Picard set in as if it was, like 30 years after TNG? Why do we keep having to have bloody prequels?
I think laziness, because if you develop this body of work, the original series, the Next Generation, they talk a lot about the past. Well, here we talked about an episode, whatever, of the original series. Let's do that because we're so out of ideas. We can either reboot Star Trek, J.J. Abrams, or we can develop something that we've already talked about that makes it easy for us. And I think it's just laziness to come up with new material.
I think with Discovery, they did 2 seasons as a prequel, which still winds me up, but still this makes no sense. They have the most powerful ship we've probably ever seen in the Federation, but it's at the same time, it's before the original series. No sense. They changed everything. They kicked canon to death. But then they've moved it, and now we're in the future. And I'm like, oh, that would be interesting. Oh no, there's no dilithium. Oh God, this is going to be so boring. It's just like,
I kind of like that because in terms of canon, and they allude to this sometimes. You'll see somebody, in the future cast, like the Admiral of Starfleet, talk about something like it was so far in the past, like what were the details, and it goes back to they mentioned a little bit about Picard and this I think it's episode 4, season 4 of Discovery, and kind of the way you take it could be one way. That may not have went well for Picard, or it could have been another way. I don't know, but it was just. And they're kind of really fuzzy on all the details. So you can get by with how did that go? And just because humanity has marched so far.
Yeah. I mean, I suppose the burn and the collapse and the way that happened as well, I suppose it would be maybe not as important. I mean, they were at the brink of complete gone. The Federation was nearly gone. And that is the exciting thing about Disco, the way they've done that is that they could actually now do anything.
Yeah.
And I haven't seen the start of Disco yet, the 4th series. I did get one interesting comment though about Discovery. And the guy basically says, is it really sci-fi or is it fantasy? Is it more like Star Wars and like a space opera than it is Star Trek? And I think he's got a really interesting point because the whole style is really not Star Trek. I mean, everything with the Klingon, in the very first episode, and that space battle, it's not really very Trekky. It's more Star Warsy. in its style.
It reminds me of a line from Firefly. Wash is sitting at the dinner table along with his wife, and he's discussing something, and he says, "God, that's just like science fiction." And his wife leans over and said, "Honey, you're living on a spaceship."
It's one of the greatest lines in Firefly.
And it's just like,
you live
okay,
you live in a spaceship.
Where is that line? It
isn't. Yeah, but I think the line is it's science fiction is supposed to be, even though it's fiction, it's supposed to be based on science. It's supposed to be based on something you can relate to, sort of thing. Discovery seems to have just gone away from that. It just seems to have gone, let's everything like let's ground it in some sort of theoretical science. TNG, the Dyson sphere, even warp, and the energy. All of this was based on, loosely, I suppose you could argue, some sort of reality, or at least theory of something in physics. There's a science element to it. Disco's just gone, spore drive, yay, that'll do.
Yay, spore drive, yay, yay.
But I mean, the way the Klingons are, they come across like it is like a space opera. It is sort of like there's just a something. There's no. I think that the science part of it may be gone, and that's not necessarily a bad thing.
Right.
Because and I think that is a discussion. I just thought it was a really interesting comment to make, and this chap actually goes on to say, he loves it. He thinks it's great, but it is a space opera now. It's not science fiction anymore, and I think he's got a really interesting point. I think Picard as well. We'll talk about Picard in a minute, but I think that's similar. But we'll talk about the poll I did. So I want to say, right, so how does the original or the classic Star Trek compare to J.J. Abrams, Disco, Picard, everything else? So I think that the answers are really good. So first of all, it's totally different. You can't compare them. It's like chalk and cheese sort of thing. It's not fair to compare them at all.
Oh, I would agree with that.
That's 26%. A quarter of people basically agree with that. 33%, a third of people, the biggest chunk of people, went, you can't compare them because the new stuff isn't particularly good. Isn't very good. And I lean towards that a little bit as well, but I think so. 26% of people said it's different, but it's still good. And then 15% of people said it's a modern take on Star Trek. So yeah, again, maybe it's a bit different, but it's brilliant. They love it. It's still Star Trek. Star Trek at the end of the day. Freaking love it. I'm not the massive fan of new Star Trek. Don't get me wrong. I'm a Trekkie. I'll still watch it. But sometimes I watch it and I am there. I have to sort of. I'm always putting up with parts of it.
Right.
And I love the J.J. Abrams movies. I thought they were great movies. I really enjoyed them. I don't really consider them Star Trek. I think they're more like just like a good sci-fi movie. You could remove if you changed the ship design. Well, they did change the ship design in every film, and it's horrendous. But if you could call that the HMS Reliant or something, and change all the character names and just not call it Star Trek. It'd be a good film, but it wouldn't be Star Trek. Do you know what I mean?
Right. I really set the Kelvin timeline, the stuff that J.J. Abrams put out. Well, I thought in terms of content was, like you said, I mean, I think is like some of the weakest. Frankly, I would have rather see another stab at something like Enterprise and see, some of the Abrams movies. Because they seem like, we're doing Kobayashi Maru again.
Yeah.
And it's like, dude, is there some other thing in Starfleet training other than Kobayashi Maru? I mean, these guys are they studying for it, day in, and sometimes at some point in time, the students are going to let it leak. Oh, that's a bullshit class,
Yeah.
I mean,
they're always so surprised, don't they? I can't win. What?
I can't win.
That's the point of it. We all know.
It's just at some point someone's. I mean, shit. I mean, they Bones talks about it, incessantly about how Kirk, redid it. So it can't be a secret. And it's just it's just like you said, I think it's another Star Trek movie. I think, picking a Cumberbatch is like, Khan Noonien Singh. He didn't look like a Khan Noonien Singh to me.
On paper, that was genius. On paper, Benedict Cumberbatch's Khan, I was like, yeah. In the actual movie, Didn't quite work.
He
actually overdid it.
He get all cheery at all the wrong times. It was just like, no, did not.
The bit where it goes, my real name's Khan. And, and we're all there going, we knew that. Like, I knew that half an hour ago.
Yeah.
So that, but again, though, I love the film. It's just not Star Trek. But I love the film, and I love a lens flare as much as the next man. So it's brilliant. I hate that they basically seem to make the Enterprise hydroelectric. That really annoyed me. They have one warp core, but then you see like 8 jump out. You see a black hole being used as a time traveling transportation device, and I'm like, Stephen Hawking would be spinning in his grave. It's just like loads of bits of that film made no sense. A star blew up, and unless it's the Romulan star, which they don't ever actually say, but unless it's the Romulan star blowing up, how the hell did it destroy the Romulan homeworld? Or how the hell did it do it but they didn't see it coming? Fast space stuff there. If it's a different star went supernova, they would have many years advance notice before the shockwave hit Romulus. But we'll ignore that. But actually, I think they hint at that at Picard, because they do try to actually get everybody off Romulus. And they have time to actually build a fleet of ships to go and save as many people as possible until the androids. So maybe that's not a fair point, but there's just loads of bits in that film. As a Trekkie, I'm going, sort of thing. But and just enjoying a movie, it's a good movie.
Well, yeah, we're in terms of the Abrams stuff, especially Beyond and Into Darkness. Where did that really take us in terms of?
Nothing really.
I pulled this one episode of one of my favorites of the original series, The Devil in the Dark.
Oh, you'll have to remind me.
Okay, Devil in the Dark. There's these miners that on this planet. They can't make their shipments to Starfleet or to the Federation, and Enterprise is sent in to get them back on track. Kirk goes down. It turns out, and Spock, there's all these little shells around, but these men are being killed by something, and it turns out there's a creature, a silicon-based life form called a Horta, that has thousands of these eggs, and she's protecting the brood, but she's injured, and so Bones is sent down with some cement and heals the Horta. I tell you what, Jim, I think I can cure anything. And so that subject, especially in the 60s, broached all sorts of things, cooperation between species, silicon-based life forms. I mean, I'm trying to think of what episode of I Dream of Jeannie, had silicon-based life forms on at that point in time, and that really took that idea further. And so with Khan, we get he's genetically modified. Okay. He can jump long distances. Okay. That was done in Dune.
Yeah.
It's where Trek is known for where it takes us. Like, holy shit! Why didn't we think of that? That's where when it really catches you, at least good sci-fi, not just necessarily in Star Trek, but in any really good sci-fi, it expands your mind to where you have an emotional reaction of holy shit, that's amazing. Like is it Larry Niven, Ringworld?
Oh yeah.
Of a circle, around a star. And think of how much land that would open up for. I mean, there would be no overcrowd. I mean, dude, there'd be lots of fornicating to have that to overwhelm.
Infinite power, infinite energy, infinite.
Right. And it's those holy hell moments. It's like, oh my god, that is insanely cool.
Yeah.
I just don't get, from.
There wasn't that in Yeah, there wasn't that in the films. The
Yeah.
only bit that I think I liked is we found out why Bones is called Bones. You know, he's got divorced. He says she took everything but my bones.
Took everything but my bones.
Other than that,
she got the moon in the divorce.
Yeah, there's not a great deal in those three films that really pushed it, and we learned anything really. I think Strange New Worlds will be more interesting from that point of view. I think we'll learn a lot from that. I do wonder if that could morph into a new an actual reboot of the original series, that we will actually see Kirk captain the Enterprise at some point again. I just have a suspicion that might be where that goes, but we'll see.
Well, I mean, one of my all-time hated Star Trek anythings was Star Trek Beyond.
It's not a good film.
It was, it just, oh God, let's take the crash landed starship, right? And let's get that thing flying again. And it was not like, Star Trek Prodigy, where the ship was in decent shape. This was, I mean, it was just beat all day. I mean, it was just nothing, it was just, I mean, the actors, it's not their fault. I mean, they get, script and a bunch of money and they do their best, but I just don't think the story was there. And it was just like, oh, Beyond, I don't know. Let's watch a rerun of Seinfeld.
Yeah.
I mean,
but there was lots of things in that film that made no sense. So, I mean, like the crystal stuff that comes out the back of the motorbike that he charged around on. I was like, that was just done for a stunt. It was not done for a reason. They just wanted to do that.
They wanted to make an action film.
Make no sense. The Franklin's in it. That's fine, but I mean, Idris Elba's character, don't care by the end. It's like whatever. Beautifully done. I looked at the starbase. It's stupid. You actually think about that from a design point of view. It's the stupidest design in the world. It makes no sense.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Let's not get into the civic and mechanical engineering problems of that whole thing.
But I mean, it was like the ship comes in and goes through the tunnel thing. I like it looked beautiful, but from from my Trekkie side goes, what a load of shit.
I mean,
it makes no sense.
They could have taken that budget and made, Mad Max 4, and throw in Tina Turner, under the Thunderdome, and it'd have been a better movie, because that's essentially what it was. But instead of Starfleet uniforms, put them in their best Abercrombie and Fitch with leather and some assless chaps. Much better movie.
Yeah, the best bit of that film, other than, I mean, some of the visual effects is stunning. I love the bit where the Enterprise is flying along and all the little things, the swarm ships are blowing up and the music's playing. Looked great. From my Trekkie side goes, what a load of crap, but looked great. The best bit of that film was when they made Sulu gay, and I love that as a little nod to the original actor sort of thing, who fought for gay rights his whole life. Yeah, I liked that bit, and that stood out in the movie for me as the bit, because that actually was worth it. The rest of the film, I don't really care. But that's a reason why we haven't had another J.J. Abrams movie since, and we may not get one. So they're still umming and ahhing about whether to do one or not, aren't they? But
I think I don't know, with what he did with Trek and what he did with Star Wars, the last 3 chapters, or with Star Wars in general. Give it to I think Star Wars is in better hands of Happy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
I mean, Mandalorian. I mean, like Mandalorian, they had their shit tight. If we could just get a Mandalorian quality story out of the Star Trek universe, I think it'd be awesome.
It needs the best showrunner, though. The Mandalorian's got a great showrunner. It's like he knows his stuff. Who is actually a consultant? His name's gone out of my head, which is really annoying. I can picture him. But he's actually a consultant on Orville that you aren't the huge fan of, but I love.
It's okay. I mean, the first episode, the guy ejaculates out of his face. What's not to love?
Exactly. And I do question some of the humor. I think is it a comedy or is it a sci-fi? I'd question that sometimes. I can understand why people don't like it. If you don't like his sense of humor, you're not going to like the show. But I mean, I think it's actually the best Star Trek on telly. It's Orville. I think it's better than anything else. But let's talk about Disco and Picard.
Sure.
So Discovery.
You're wrong. Go ahead. Sorry.
No, I'm going to say that I never liked the premise. I don't like the style. I don't like what they did to the Klingons. I don't like that they kicked the cack out of canon. But I actually do quite like the show. And I think you've always got the first series is always crap. So we can wipe out the first series. We can ignore it. Every first series of Star Trek is awful. Or at least it gets better.
Right.
The second series, I've not actually watched all of. I got bored. But the third series was great. I really enjoyed it.
The thing I liked about the first season was Lorca.
Mm-hmm.
The captain's not the captain, the one from the mirror universe. I mean,
that
was just, you think he's got psychological problems, but no, he's just an asshole. And the way it was played, I mean,
great
the
actor as well.
is just exceptional. The way he played that, like he'd answer the door, he's got a gun behind his back.
Mm-hmm.
It was just, I really liked it for those points,
Yeah, I think there has been some really, really good bits. I do agree with you. Lorca's great. To be fair, if they'd have took out the spore drive out of Discovery, I think it would have been a lot better. I think that was their temporal Cold War mistake.
Yeah,
temporal Cold War in Enterprise, spore drive in Discovery. They should have took that out.
Well, I can't. I'm going to have to divert here. There's there's a lot of documentaries that came on last couple of years over mushrooms, not magic mushrooms, just the mushrooms and fungi, the kingdom of fungi. And that shit is so amazing, mycelium and how it just envelops most of the topsoil of Earth and kind of really its own little organism, and it's just and I can say, I can see where somewhere there was a biology student in the writer's room that pitched that. And they said, well, no. And I said, now that I've seen 10 straight hours of mycelium documentaries, I can kind of see that now.
Just the
whole bunch of
thing you
just
try.
What's
the thing called that they plug into the? Oh, it's going to annoy me. Somebody in the comments will tell me.
The creature.
Yeah, but that's a real creature. Yeah, that's a real microbial creature on it that can survive radiation and all sorts. They think it could even spread among the galaxies because they found spores of this thing that are 5 million years old, and then when they warmed them up, they hatched. Yeah. It's just like this is an incredibly.
Tardigrades have survived 5 extinction level events just here on Earth.
Yeah,
and they can live in the vacuum of space. It's the most. I mean, hell, I even follow an account on my Twitter that was the Daily Tardigrade. I mean, it's just and it's an insane little critter. And if you know the short treks for Discovery, the girl, very young Michael, has a stuffed tardigrade as a stuffy, and it's just that's so adorable. No, I want one, but so. I thought the same way. I felt the same way as you. I really, it's just, and then I saw all the mycelium.
Yeah,
in fungi.
I do like how they based that on some sort of science, which I do like. They just sort of went with it.
Unlike J.J. Abrams, which was
he just did stuff
pissed off, Romulan Minor. Really, it just
exactly. Just things like how massive the Enterprise is. The Enterprise is much bigger than the Enterprise E. Because J.B. Abrams went, let's make it bigger. There's no reason for it. He just went, let's make it bigger.
Yeah,
this is gonna be on IMAX. Let's make it bigger. Oh, the engines, they look too sensible on the original. Let's make them stupid looking. It's just everything about that ship is like, can we have some flappy things? Why? I just think it'll look nice. Can somebody punch J.J. Abrams in the face, please? And stop him ruining my show.
Because it's just all style over substance.
Yeah, exactly. That is perfect saying, actually putting it there. Can you say the same thing about Discovery, though? Because it's a beautiful show. The battle between the Federation and the Klingons in the first, I think it was the second episode of Discovery, is stunning looking. I mean, it's great. The way the Klingon ship goes into the Admiral ship and just and is stunning, but it's still. I mean, I still think it's quite forgettable because I don't think there was a great deal of substance to it. It's more visually nice than maybe.
Yeah, one of the I think one of the best characters that has been developed in the whole streaming Star Trek universe, not the Kelvin timeline, was Giorgio.
I love the Giorgio character. Michelle Yeoh is stunning. I love her in everything.
Yeah, and where in the last episode, how they wind up, how they finished. I won't say finish. How they exit that character from that series. Is the Guardian. I was like, who is this guy with the bowler hat? He's reading.
Great, isn't it?
What the fuck is going on? And then it turned out to be the Guardian. And we go, oh my! It was like one of those, oh my god, we got back to sci-fi.
Yeah,
And
that's one of my favorite episodes in a long, long time of Star Trek.
Yeah. And Philippa Georgia, the way they exited her from that series, it was. I don't think it was like, okay, it was one of those things we were just talking about earlier that they've run out of ideas, so let's go milk an earlier episode. I don't think it was that. I think this was generally something telling a little bit more about the Guardian and give a good send-off for Giorgio.
Yeah.
Does that make any sense?
Because it goes back to one of the best or one of the most memorable original series episodes.
Right.
It gives us more, but we learn something from it. It's like you talk about the J.J. Abrams movies, how they don't really add anything to Star Trek. That episode does, though. I mean, Discovery does. I mean, however much I know they kick the crap out of canon at times, and that is annoying.
Right.
But they do episodes like that, and you go, that's what Star Trek should be. That adds something to the genre. It just adds something to, like I said, we learn something more about the Guardian, and it was I love that, and I when it's done right, bringing back something like that and bringing back like the Guardian and doing something like that when it's done right is fantastic.
Yeah.
Yeah, so there's not fans of Discovery. People either love or hate Discovery, but it's growing on me like a spore. It's growing on me.
In terms of television history, I mean, when Captain Kirk in the original series said, "Let's just get the hell out of here," one of the very first times, at least in America, that the word "hell" was used in prime time.
And that's what sci-fi should do, to be fair. It should push the boundaries a little bit. I think that's a good time to talk. We'll mention woke and woke TV. And that's one of the things that people do get angry about Discovery, and they say it's too woke. 50% of the characters are gay or transgender, or people have even talked about how Michael has got a boy's name. And I'm like, what's that got to do with anything? But is one of the reasons why some people hate Discovery, though, is because it's a little bit too politically correct, and somebody cries every 5 minutes in that damn show. I mean, the show I like and is growing on me.
Right. So the whole thing of like, Michael, what kind of crazy, name is that for a girl? Well, Nostradamus's first name was Michelle.
Yeah. It really doesn't matter.
I mean, just how rainbow flag was that, and what? No, it's just, guys, get over it.
It's
like,
just,
it's how many years in the future, and you can't have a girl name. I mean, Anyway,
it's irrelevant, isn't it? It's completely irrelevant.
I think it's
I don't know if people get upset about it.
That shit irrelevant, but sci-fi, pushing those boundaries. It's not that. Broadcast TV, at least here in the United States, broadcast television lacked wokeness. It wasn't the sci-fi writers that lacked wokeness. It was the presidents of the channel, presidents of the network. You know, I mean, it's like I remember I had a relative that blamed gayness, or no, she blamed oral sex on Dr. Ruth. Well, if it wasn't for Dr. Ruth talking about oral sex, there'd be no oral sex. And I think, have you ever seen any Roman Greco art? Oh my God. You
Oh
know,
yeah,
I
they
mean,
were going at it like monkeys.
I mean, they put it in the most, you know, they put, you know, acts of oral sex, depictions of it in the tiles at the market, right beside, oh, buy this fish, you know, broth. And it's not that it wasn't in science fiction. It's the powers that be in broadcast networks or publishing companies wouldn't publish it.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, I mean, if it reminds me of, if people really knew how much witchcraft was in the Bible, would it be a bestseller today? What if you just took the bits of the Bible that included witchcraft and just a separate, you know, volume, the witch stories, the Holy Bible? I mean, hotcakes. But it's just, I think society's self-censorship, that it doesn't cause wokeness, it causes bigotry.
Yeah.
And I mean, because I remember reading a Star Trek novel. I'm blanking on the title because it was a long time, mid 80s maybe. It's where the Enterprise crew, the original Enterprise crew, runs into this planet where the sentient beings are cats, right? And they can't stop looking at Uhura. They don't understand why. And Uhura's starting to feel a little bit, you know, put out. So she later asks, "Why is everybody staring at me?" And they don't know. So they say, eventually down the story, she just goes and asks them. I said, "Well, where are your children?" Well, what do you mean, my children? Your memories. They're engorged. Why aren't you feeding your children? They think that Uhura is mistreating her children just because her breasts are whatever size. And, you know, and can you imagine getting that on 60s TV?
No, yeah.
And this
America was like,
and this story was
in the
40,
60s.
50 years old, I guess.
Yeah.
So,
but that's the thing, is good sci-fi should be. I mean, I hate the term woke. It drives me up the wall. It's sci-fi to me has always been this way, and sci-fi writers will write about what's important to them, and it's a social commentary. They're talking about what's important or what the problems are in society. And I know, like gender and stuff is a massive problem for the kids and for the younger generation at the moment. I work in psychology as a job. And it is a big problem. There's a lot of research going into it because our kids are really struggling with it. Not all of them, obviously, but it's a big problem. Gender all of a sudden isn't like as fixed as it used to be. And people are trying to figure out what that means, and they're just trying to get their heads around it. All I see in a lot of sci-fi is a commentary on that and a commentary on, you know, the problems in society. And it's still a lot about race as well. There's a lot about race in Star Trek. You know, there's, like all good sci-fi, you can look at it on its surface as just entertainment and just watch it, or you can enjoy that there are layers to it, there are meanings to these things. You know, and there's a commentary on politics, racism, all the other isms,
right?
And there's, you know, and there's just episodes sometimes when we just want to beat the shit out of somebody, and you know, it's just an action story, and you know,
Exactly.
that's why I love it. But okay, finally,
there's another. I'm trying to make sure I've got Gateway album, Frederick Pohl, Gateway novel. 1977. Frederick Pohl, Pohl, wrote a novel called Gateway, and it was very popular, whole series of books. I don't know if you remember it or not. And it is talking about. I mean, I reread it recently, last year during COVID, and it was like, oh my God. In 1977, he's kind of describing the American medical system.
Yeah.
You know, with insurance and Blue Cross Plus. It's like, we bitch about, healthcare is a right or how healthcare should not be a right in America. And it's just like, here's this guy from 1977 that nailed it, and is also a treatment in poverty and all this other stuff. I mean, was he woke in 1977? I mean, those are kind of woke topics, housing as a right, healthcare as a right.
I always think when people think that like sort of the environment or overpopulation is something people have only been worried about the last decade. You can watch sci-fi and things like this from what was it, the one with I've forgotten her name. Everyone's exterminated at the age of 30. So they got Logan's Run. Logan's Run. That is talking about environmental issues and overpopulation and resources and all these things that were a bit like, oh god, this might be, all of a sudden this is a problem. 50 years ago, we knew this was a problem 50 years ago. It's just that we've ignored it through the Reagan years and whatever, and through the prosperous years of the 80s and 90s, and now all of a sudden it's becoming a thing. But sci-fi's always done that, or good sci-fi should do that. And sometimes sci-fi is just entertainment. There's no layers to it. There's just like aliens, cool, let's go kill them. But sometimes there's a reason for it, and that's the best way. And don't get me wrong, it can be done badly and it can be done well. Sometimes Discovery's done it well, sometimes it's done it badly.
Yeah.
Picard, before we say say adieu, because he's French. See what I did there? Adieu. If that's how you say it. I don't really know any French. I really enjoyed Picard until the last episode. And for me, the last episode was just a massive pile of burning horse manure from pretty much beginning to end. It was just bad. And I will tell you, well, I mean, I'm quite happy to tell you why, but what do you think about Picard? And how do you think, again, it sort of like as a continuation of TNG in a way, the only Star Trek we've got in contemporary time that would be, like in the same time frame. What do you think of it?
Okay, so I loved Picard up until kind of the end. I liked where Data just wanted the right to die, which touches on all sorts of things, that's been in public conversation since Kevorkian, was doing physician-assisted suicides. And I thought that was a really good storyline. I thought, the whole thing of the Romulans or secret Romulan group is, harvesting illegal Borg tech. I thought that was really cool. But the whole thing with the synthetic society gone wrong. That was just ridiculous.
Another song.
Sake. Yeah, and
the gene pool in that family is about that deep. They all look identical. It's weird.
You got to get on season 4 of Discovery. There's this little slice in there, and it's just
no spoilers.
But yeah, I just thought it was. You spent 9 episodes getting to here.
Do you know the most annoying bit for me? The terrible universe destroying bad guy that the Romulans were all so terrified of, and that the android society brought through with their, they're like, oh, we're going to bring it through. And then that portal opens, you're thinking, oh God, this is going to be terrifying. And then just some stupid little tentacles going to, who thought that was a good idea?
Somebody watched the right to go porn, I think, as a young kid.
Some tentacles. It's just stupid. And obviously, as a Trekkie, I love the starships and things. I love the technical stuff for the starships. I read the technical manual for the Enterprise religiously. I'm like, oh God, this. I remember watching a video, and it did really, really well on another YouTube channel, which I'm not going to advertise, Trek Culture. That's really, really good. But they said, oh my God, there were dolphins on the Enterprise. And I'm like, yeah, I know, because I read the technical manual when I was like 10. It's just like I thought it was weird at the time, but but so I love the starships. The starships at the Federation, because the Federation were completely missing throughout that entire series.
Right,
we never see the Federation at all. And then we see them at the end, and all those ships coming in. Riker on the bridge, going, "I got the baddest, whatever, the toughest starship, and I got a whole fleet of them."
He's got the fuck you starship.
He's got the fuck you starship, definitely, and it's crap. It's ugly. It's got a weird. For some reason, the shuttle bay at the front is wider than the entire ship. It would actually be wider than the original Enterprise. It's enormous.
Right.
Randomly, it's ugly. The CGI was really bad, but I think that was because they rewrote the end. Because I think somebody went, you know what, the Federation actually aren't in Picard at all. I think they should probably turn up at the end. And so they rewrote the end, I think. But so the CGI is just terrible. All the ships are exactly the same, which annoys me. When has that ever been in the Federation?
Well, there is a way for it to actually been worse, and let me tell you how. For the last episode of Picard, instead of the Federation and Riker, coming in, to save the day, if it was only the Xindi.
Okay. I mean,
there would have been, the insectoids on the microphone, and you get some kind of crazy translation that only, I don't know, Sung can decipher. I think he said happy birthday. Something. I mean, if you want to make it shittier, I think we can bring in the Xindi to save the day.
Oh, yeah, no, we could have made it worse.
Yes. And that could have been, and the tentacle thing, it could have been, I don't know, a long lost species of the Xindi before the avians ever got it.
We see Captain Barclay going, "I've got the baddest, worst ship ever built," Commander Barclay.
And the Xindi are on the Cerritos. Yeah, we can make it shittier.
But then bloody Picard dies and they turn him into an android. And I'm just like, God, it's just like, you put a drunk person in charge of this. It's just like,
do you mind if I actually talk about the spoiler from Discovery about the Picard thing?
Go on then, but you're going to make me angry because I've not seen it yet. But go on.
So there's this throwaway line, and this goes back to we were talking about, in season 4 Discovery, they're in the advanced timeline, and there's a lot of history is just kind of fuzzy. And they kind of maybe one way you could look at it is they insinuate that Picard's transitioning to a synthetic body may have gone wrong.
Dum, dum, dum.
Yeah, it was tried a lot, in the past, but it stopped after it didn't go very well with, what was it? It was some admiral's name, Picard, I think it was. And because they're fixing up a new body for somebody else, and
okay,
and it's
so that's a spoiler alert for something that's going to come into the Picard Series 2. Then,
you could take it one way where something really shitty happened to Picard, or it just, it was just dead end technology. I don't know.
Didn't work.
Maybe.
I actually think I think Disco and Picard Series 2 might be connected quite a lot, though. So I think there's stuff with the broken time, and there's something about, I know Q is in this series, and
yes,
I wonder whether they're going to do something with the burn. I think there's going to be some sort of connection there, but I mean, it feels to me like Disco is going to be connected to a few of the other series a little bit more, that we're going to get little things. Even with Deep Space Nine, I just get the hints that we're going to get little comments like that throughout Discovery, but we'll see.
Good.
But Picard Series 2 is interesting for me because it's just the whole thing with the Q. The Q fascinate me, and I wonder if we're actually going to find out why the Q put humanity on trial, and is there going to be an answer to that? Because we never really found out why they picking on humanity. Surely, if they're going to talk about somebody being brutal and whether they deserve to exist in the universe, the Klingons are only around the corner. They're quite brutal. And the Romulans are vicious as well. I mean, at least you could say the Klingons are violent because of honor and stuff. The Romulans are just violent. They're quite sadistic people in a way.
Yeah.
Why would he put humanity on things? But anyway, that's lots of theories, fan theories about that, actually.
I've missed you.
Exactly, yeah. I love that. And then he's going to appear as an old man, so they're going to have to do that to like say, "Oh, seen it? Haven't you got old, Picard?" And so then he appears as an old man himself. But I just love Q. But that's going to be my next couple of episodes on Sidetrack. Are going to be I'm looking at the Q, and I've got a few theories.
Was the Q in the original series? There's that question.
Trelawney. Yeah,
Maybe.
Trelawney. I'm actually talking about that because one of the questions I have is the Q biological? Is his superpowers sort of evolved, or is it based on technology? If Trelawney was Q, which he looks like a Q in almost every way, then they're technology based. So all of a sudden, it may be why the Q are so concerned about the Borg makes sense. And these things about don't provoke the Borg,
right?
Because they're obviously a species out of time, perhaps Q, that they can jump forwards, backwards in time. So maybe the Q are interested in humanity because of what humanity have become, but they're also fearful of the Borg because of what the Borg can become.
Yes. What was the episode in original series that it was the Roman Greco god that?
Oh yes, it comes and pinches the Enterprise in a big giant hand.
Yeah,
Is it that one?
It has a lot of a lot of Q type sensibilities and powers, and there's a whole argument there. Like, was he Q and just not Q, or was he a mentally ill Q because he didn't identify as Q? Every other Q we've met, oh hey Q, hi Q, how are you doing? Oh, I'm doing quite well. They call each other Q. They identify.
Yeah.
But what if this was a mentally ill Q?
Well, we see that in Voyager episodes when the one wants to commit suicide and stuff. Or it could also be an earlier version of the Q as well. Because again, this is a species out of time. Once they evolve and they get up to that point, they can sort of go anywhere in time and see everything and everything. Maybe we actually are seeing a Q before they quite reach that level.
Right.
So very powerful, but not maybe quite continuum sort of level. So somewhere on the ladder.
Yeah.
Maybe that's what we're seeing. I think maybe that's the same with Trelane, that we're seeing it's maybe a slightly earlier version of the Q. But that's saying it makes more sense to me if the Q are technologically based. There's Arthur C. Clarke saying, isn't there? That any sort of sufficiently advanced technology would appear to be magic to anybody else, sort of thing. And I think that's where, and that would make sense why the Q are always clicking fingers and waving hands as well. They have to sort of like do something to trigger the power or whatever. But
that episode we're talking about is the Squire of Gothos.
Squire of Gothos.
Squire of Gothos.
I literally watched it yesterday. I literally did because I'm researching for these Q episodes, so that's why I'm getting ready for that. So that'll be in the next couple of weeks, people. Right, so we've got to answer the question then. We've said Deep Space Nine for us is probably the best Star Trek. How does that compare to what we've got now? Do you think it's as good as a modern version, a modern take on what we've got, but it's as good as anything we've seen before, or is it a pale comparison of Star Trek?
I think the 10 episode series that Paramount is pumping out, I think they're good. I think they're good, but when we look back at Deep Space Nine, we're looking at all the seasons of Deep Space Nine as a completed beginning to end story.
Yeah,
and we don't know what the end of Discovery is. Is there something that's going to explain all of this? And they're trying to do a lot of things in just 10 episodes. How many episodes was in just Deep Space Nine? Is over.
They normally do 24, 26 episodes. Yeah, they're not always quite the same. And sometimes there's 24, sometimes 26.
Yeah, and depends on if there's a writer's strike that year.
Yeah. Yeah, true. I just don't. I honestly think they're just. I don't think you can compare them. I think they're very different.
Yeah, I think they're also different. You really can't compare them.
Yeah, that's where I'm leaning. It's a different generation. It's a different the way TV is presented now is very different. Like you said, that's a perfect way of putting it. Actually, it's like streaming Star Trek versus network Star Trek sort of thing. 10 episodes, very different again. The budget is insanely different. The use of special effects is different. And even though, as a whole, I'm not a massive fan of Discovery, in parts, it's been brilliant. It's been so good in bits. The whole thing with, like you say, like Michelle Yeoh's character, I've loved. The Mirror Universe episodes, brilliant. Bits of it I hate, but bits of it I just adore. And I am looking forward to starting to watch the new series.
And Deep Space Nine had 176 episodes, so there's a lot of story you can tell in 176 episodes that none of the streaming.
They're never going to get that, are they? No,
they'll never get that.
They've got to knock every episode out of the park, really, aren't they? Whereas in Deep Space Nine, TNG, Voyager, even there was ups and downs. Episodes that were really nothing episodes, but we forget them because there were so many episodes. There's some bad TNG episodes. There were some, even series 7, they went mental with some of those episodes. They just sort of threw everything at it. But overall, it's the characters that we remember, isn't it? And I do wonder if we're going to remember any of these characters from Discovery. I can't see Michael Burnham being remembered in 10 years' time as a great Star Trek character, whereas Sisko, others, O'Brien even, will be remembered, and Data, and Picard, and all these characters, 7 of 9, Janeway, all these big characters will be remembered.
I think if anyone's going to be, at least in my mind, one of the more memorable characters from Discovery would be, of course, Lorca and Saru. Saru is a character I really ponder a lot about. I really think about,
I feel sorry for the actor. Poor sod.
The
shoes and the things and the makeup. Oh,
man, the makeup's got to be brutal.
Yeah, it's got to be bad.
But there's something about, how Saru began, as just, sentient kelp. And then he met Philippa Georgiou, and she whisked him off the planet, off his home world, disrupted his life. But it was, that was really a science fiction moment. It was like, what happens when you whisk somebody away from their home when they've already seen ships from another world. They already know all of these things, but they're just out of sorts with their community.
Yeah.
And it's just like, that was really good. And so I think, Saru as a character, we know more about Michael Burnham, and there's interesting bits there with her and Sarek, but I don't know. I think there's a lot to love about Mr. Saru.
I think Saru's a really lovely character, and I think, like you say, Georgiou is the character for me that has been brilliant. But Michael Burnham's supposed to be the lead, and she's no Captain Kirk, put it that way, as a character. Likeable actress, but that's about it. But anyway, right, that will do us, sir. Thank you so much for that. And we are going to be back in the next week or two doing another live video, hopefully with a couple of other friends, which we're going to actually pick our favourite episodes from every Star Trek The Next Generation series. So a favourite episode from each series. And we might throw a couple little curveballs in there, as well as the episodes that make you want to put your finger in your eyeball and just say, "No,
no, you're wrong."
Mikey is going to be joining us, and I am telling you now, I know which episode he's going to pick because I'm psychic.
Oh,
I'll guarantee you. I'm hoping he's not watching because it'll spurn it. But
okay, let's see how good your psychism is. Which is my favorite?
As soon as I say
Deep Space Nine episode.
I've forgotten what it's called. In the Pale Moonlight. It's got to be In the Pale Moonlight. It's by miles the best episode. Go on then, you tell me. What is your favourite Deep Space Nine episode?
It's where Quark leads a band of Ferengi malcontents against the Dominion to rescue their mother, Moogie.
That is funny. I'd forgotten that episode.
And
That is
Ron's
really,
got
really good.
the Vorta all hooked up with some sort of neurological thing, blank, burned through his cerebral cortex. He's just bumping into the wall, bumping into the wall, bumping.
That is I've
And it's
forgotten
got
all
indie
about
pop.
that episode.
What's not
It's
to
a
love about
classic.
indie pop?
Yeah, what a classic episode. But when we say what is the episode you hate most of any TNG episode, I am telling you, Mikey will immediately go when Beverly Crusher bonks a ghost. He will say that immediately. He will. I promise you. But anyway, that is for another week. Hopefully next week, if not, hopefully the week after. But it depends on people's availability. But that will be us. So, Stormy, thank you so much for joining.
Very welcome, sir. Thank you for having me.
If you have not had a look at Sci-Worx, not where I am. Sci-Trek sounds like your geeky brother. And like him, Sci-Worx, I work for a living. Sci-Trek, I don't really have that bit of it.
Hey, just uploaded the last of the lost lecture series for Carl Sagan. He was just a few years after he got his PhD, did a series called Violent Universe. Ooh. And if you want to see Carl Sagan in black and white, I've restored the footage. Check it out on Sci-Worx on YouTube.
Fantastic. I've not seen that. I'm going to have to pop and have a look.
Get off your ass.
There you go. I will. Have a look. Aaron has got to make a good point there. That the
worst
Star Trek episode.
Yeah.
That is a really bad episode.
There's so many endings. Oh my god, I can do this.
Remote control. There's an episode as well where they rescue some hippies, and then they start playing their thing, and they start singing a song, and Spock's just understood they're watching. And the only reason I do like that episode is it's really, really bad. But I can almost read Spock's brain of going like. Even he knows this is awful.
But and they land him on this paradise, and the foliage is acidic, eats through their flip flops or whatever. And
episode.
Really, you couldn't detect really that shit in orbit.
Yeah, I'm sure there's some more TNG episodes we've just forgotten about, but there's some bad ones. Anyway, let's call it an evening. And again, thank you, Stormy.
Very welcome.
It's always a pleasure to have my resident American on. And we'll see you next time, guys. Thank you very much for watching.
See you guys. Take care.